Okay, I got this little Steadicam thing, so we'll see how this works out. I got to talk about the synchronicities that are happening with this little project. I'll just walk over here and show you. Do-do-do-do. This project. Anyway, so there are synchronicities happening, and it's interesting. 'Cause my grandfather was a master carpenter, and he I feel like he's been with me in this project, to be completely blunt and honest. There's been a couple times that he's come to me in dreams, or there's just impressions, downloads, words that come into sentences that come into my mind that just sound like him, and they'll give me advice on things. All the time, actually. It's pretty fascinating how this works. When I was a Mormon, I would have called this the Holy Ghost, but as a deconstructed Christian spiritual person, I'm just gonna say maybe it's my grandpa, So he came to me in a dream and he said, don't worry about the roof, it will go smoothly. Because I knew that I needed to get a stencil for the roof. I'll show you what the stencil looks like. And I needed the stencil to be perfect, and I needed it to come from a CNC machine. This is the stencil here. The only way that I could have made it perfect, see that perfect curve on there? I need the roof to be perfectly sloped. And so nobody has a CNC machine. How am I going to find a CNC machine? What a random specific thing. He came to me and he said, in a dream, and he said, call your cousin Scott. Scott is my oldest cousin on my mother's side. We never have family reunions. I've literally never talked to this guy. He's like 60. He's like, he's like way older than me. I'm 40. I'm almost 40 years old. So, and it kept coming 3 times a day. Call your cousin Scott. And an image of him would come into my mind. And I'm like, that's so random. I know that he maybe once was a cabinet maker, and it just kept reminding me. It happened for like 9 days straight. And finally I was like, all right, I'm just going to follow this. And what's the worst that could happen? So I call my mom, I get her sister's number, Janet. I call Janet, I get her son's number, Scott. I call Scott and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to do this tiny house thing for basically like a micro house for the homeless, basically like a stackable cube micro house. And he goes, awesome, and what's the roof going to look like? And I said, it's going to be a bowstring barrel rounded roof. And he goes, oh, you'll need a CNC machine. I have a CNC machine. I can have that whipped up for. So my grandpa in the dream, my grandpa said, call Scott. And then he goes, by the way, the CNC machine thing will go smoothly. He said smoothly. And I had a conversation with Scott. I sent him over an image of this thing. I just happened to have the perfect file for a CNC machine because another friend had texted me a file. Literally an hour before I talked to Scott. I sent the file to Scott, minutes before Scott said, I'm going to need a file. I had a file in hand. So I sent him the file. He goes, cool, let me look at it. Why don't you drop by tomorrow morning and we can see if we can maybe make it on my CNC machine. So I brought a board over that we were going to cut, and I was pulling it out of my truck, and he met me on the street and he handed me the stencil and he said, hey man, what the point of this is that it did go smoothly. Everything just happened randomly, of random synchronicity. Okay, so another synchronicity that just happened, and there's honestly, I'm just telling you about a couple of these, but there's been 40 or 50 of them that have all been pretty crazy. I'm not somebody who has a lot of supernatural things happen to me, so I'm enjoying this. I'm relishing every moment of this. So another thing that happened to me was that just barely I got all the wood for the trusses, for these rounded trusses that I'm making. And I start cutting them, and I'm realizing, and I'm cutting on the extra one that I have, because I bought 10, but I only need 9. And I'm using a jigsaw, and it's just wavy as shit, man. Let me show you how wavy this thing ended up. Where is it? Oh, it's already on the roof. The thing is, when you're using a jigsaw, you got to keep it perfectly vertical, which is impossible. And you got to keep it perfectly steady on the line, which for me is impossible because I'm new. And I just wasn't doing well. And randomly, right then, this carpenter calls me and he says, hey, I'd love to work on the roof with you, and I want to show you exactly how you cut it so that it's not wavy. He literally said that as I'm observing a wavy board. So and now, just today, like all at once, like right when I'm working on this, right now is the time that this guy wants to show me how to cut a non-wavy line. He reached out to me to teach me that right at the very moment I was observing. So I'm just telling you guys, this is some funky stuff, and I'm enjoying it. It's a spiritual process, and I'll tell you, I didn't have a huge relationship with my grandpa while he was alive, but gosh dang it, I talked to him, and he's a master carpenter. He built like all the churches and all the houses and all the everything in Garland, Utah, which is a tiny Mormon town. So he did everything, and he's been talking to me. He's been here, and I've never felt him here. I've never felt his tone of voice or anything in my mind until right now. So he'll tell me how to make cuts. It's just interesting. So I like this. I really like this. My vision with this house is to create a cube house, a micro house, that's cheap to manufacture. This hasn't been cheap, but that's because every time I remake this, I want to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until I'm using printed materials. And I want to put metal in the corners so that it can be stackable. So I want to make a cube that's stackable, okay? And I want to make it out of printed materials eventually so that it can be mass produced somewhere. And then you could, this is just a far-fetched dream of mine, but I'm going to share it online because, that's all I can do in the end. So, I want to make this thing mass producible. I want it to be a cube. I want it to be a stackable cube with a full kitchen and a full bathroom and everything. So, all right. I just feel like there's like a little bit of magic, little bits here and there, just magic kind of happening. So yeah, cool. Okay, bye-bye.